Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Ray from the Bloomfield Public Library. Thank you for joining us today to learn about Lights Out CT in partnership with our Bloomfield Beautification Committee. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Craig, to get us started.
Great, thank you. I've posted our website in the chat room, so you have it for future reference. Just want to share my screen. Okay. Everybody can see our logo. Okay, great. All right, I know it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'm going to ask you to pretend that we are in the dark. So as we, obviously this is total imagination. So as we sit here in the dark, excuse me, I'm still jumping around here trying to. Okay. All right, great. Okay, as we sit here in the dark, as I figure out the technology, how do you feel when you're in the dark? Do you feel a certain amount of apprehension? Do you feel a sense of wonderment? Believe it or not, humans actually have evolved to be somewhat night animals. It takes us 15 minutes for our pupils to adjust. Then it takes about 45 minutes for a protein to build up. It's called rhodopsin. But once we've acclimated, we could see in the dark as well as rabbits and whippoorwills. However, one flash of light and we are back to ground zero. We have to start all over again. So very few of us in the modern era actually experience total darkness or dark conditions. To further show that we have evolved, we're all familiar with cats or raccoons in our backyard that when you put a light on them, they have this eye shine. You know, their eyes seem like it glows, like they're in a horror movie or something. But those of us who are old enough to remember cameras and the red eye that we would get with bad flashes, that's also this pigment of eye shine. So we humans have it, not to the extent of most nocturnal animals, but we continue to really embrace it. We don't embrace the dark. Few of us really do that. We have ancient, well-founded fears why we are afraid of the dark. And so what happens is few of us ever really interact with the night and darkness. The dark really is in the black region beyond the glare of our garage light or the street lamps, the glow around our towns and cities. The people who actually do embrace the dark oftentimes are amateur astronomers. But I encourage you to get out and enjoy the night sky. So ask yourself this: what constellations are in our sky right now? The summer triangle has moved out of our zenith. It's starting to get low in our western sky as the sun sets. Scorpio, which was once a prominent constellation in our summer sky, is moving towards the horizon as well. Some of the planets that we're used to are like Jupiter has disappeared. We'll see it again in the early morning in a few months. Who here has seen the Milky Way? Who has seen the Milky Way in the past year? Sorry. How many people know what's the moon that we're in right now? Because it was last week was a full moon. We won't have another one for another 23 days or so. So the point I'm trying to make, a human in a modern world, we can go nights, weeks, months, and years without noticing the night sky. So imagine a bird. It doesn't have the luxury of ignoring the light, ignoring the night sky. So a passerine, these are our common perching birds, our robins, our bluebirds that we love during the summer months. They need to migrate. They don't have the luxury of not migrating during the day. They do that at night. So ornithologists continue to try to understand how birds navigate during the migration. Every spring and fall, they migrate at night. They evolved millions of years ago to navigate at night in a dark world to avoid heat and predators. They evolved to take advantage of the explosions of insects and other food in the northern hemisphere so that there would be bountiful resources to raise their young. Once they raise their young, they migrate to the southern hemisphere or the southern states. They're following ancient routes, navigating by the stars, the moon, and the Earth's magnetic field, and the rising and setting sun. A rising sun might signal to birds that it's time to land so they could build their energy and to rest. Maybe you may be familiar with this concept of flyways, that this is where Connecticut is. Obviously, we're looking down from above, but the birds are actually flying quite a distance above the ground, but they will follow these routes. Remember this map. Here we are in Connecticut, and here is New York. I'll ask you to remember this map in a moment. So as they fly, think of the air as habitat. Between the treetops and the mountaintops to the stratosphere, there's a layer cake of air currents, bands of cold and warm air, jet streams, headwinds, and tailwinds that are only important to birds and weather geeks. These layers can both help and hinder migrating birds by giving tailwinds and updrafts, or they could kill birds with strong winds, storms, and microbursts. So they evolved to outweigh the risk of breeding in the northern hemisphere versus what's going to be lost of the population during migration. So this is the best case scenario for these migrating birds. So our birds need airspace, starting at 200 feet for waterfowl, 500 feet for songbirds, and 700 feet for raptors. It is the waterfowl and the raptors that migrate during the day. So oftentimes it's a fall activity to go watch migrating ducks or watch hawks move through. So these elevations that I'm talking about are for birds that are cruising along, but they risk collision as they land and take off day after day during migration. We could experience the migration as the birds eclipse the moon. You know, this past full moon that we had last week, that was a perfect opportunity. In November, that full moon, it's going to be severely diminished as far as the numbers going through, because most of the passerines have migrated by that time. Sometimes we hear the birds overhead as a single bird, small groups, or larger flocks. We have built our cities and civilization under their routes. Nighttime migration has collided with human artificial daylight. In North America, we have 722 bird species. 76% of these migrate. Of these, 80% migrate at night. In other numbers, it is estimated that annually 4 billion birds move south into the contiguous United States every autumn. So this part of Canada, they have this, what's called the boreal forest, or the taiga, which a lot of our warblers that we enjoy when they migrate through, bird watchers will go out and try to watch these. Then they disappear because they're up here breeding. And then when it's time to migrate, that's when we see them again. So at the same time that these birds are coming from Canada into the United States, there's 4.7 billion birds that leave the United States for southern wintering grounds down in the tropics. The reverse trip is reversed in diminished numbers in the spring, with 3.5 billion crossing back into the United States and 2.6 billion returning to Canada across the border. So there's a huge attrition here. The diminished numbers are due to deaths on the wintering grounds, as well as the succumbing to perils during migration. The return rate back to Canada is 64%, and the return home to the United States is 76%. This is done by a study at Cornell University Lab of Ornithology. So we lose 1 billion birds to light pollution related window strikes every year in the United States. That's up to 1 billion birds every year in the United States. A lot of this information we get is by using radar. What happens is, using Doppler radar, you know, the type of radar that traffic cops are able to catch you speeding, it is set at a certain altitude. So when there's a flock of birds that are moving from their resting ground during migration, they achieve a certain altitude. They appear first as a dot, then they start to expand out as a cloud. So further sophistication, or using what's called birdcast. You know, please check them out. It's on, just do a birdcast search. It'll show you how many birds are expected to fly over you at any given time during the fall and spring migration. It's a very important tool for people who love to go out and see birds during migration, or for people to have a better understanding of the migration, or to take steps to make sure that the birds migrating are safe. However, there are many more nocturnal species with an evolutionary story that depend on the dark. Fish, bats, sea turtles, amphibians, and insects. We'll go into that a little bit more later. But humans, we have always tried to light the night with fire and torches. Since 1807, when gas street lamps were first introduced, man has continued to try to further push back the night. As time moved on, we would develop incandescent lighting and later bright halogens. Our future looked bright, or there certainly was brightness in our future, and there's a price to be paid. I don't know how many of us here have had neighbors that light up their house all night like this. We'll go into that later. So we use light to sell our products and shine on our accomplishments. We're using these bright blue, white LEDs. So whenever there's like a lot of economic activity, especially at night, that's where you're going to see the most light. And this creates a glow, this halo over our urban centers and our towns. So man has reached upward into the layers of air, not only with our structures, but with our spiking light. Beams from towers, airports, and monuments that emanate out of the sky glow that halos our sprawling megalopolis. Does anybody recognize this? Try to remember that map I showed of the Atlantic Flyway and the birds' routes. So here we are, Bloomfield, Connecticut. This is New York City, and this is Long Island, and it's very easy to point out. This is our 95 corridor and our 91 corridor. So our light really have pushed back the night. So this is daylight all the time, and this is what the birds have to fly through. So I've asked how many people have seen the Milky Way. This graphic is showing what astronomers call the Bortle scale, which measures light pollution. Few of us have actually been in excellent dark sky, when you see just about everything possible to the naked eye when there is no moon. Most of us are living in an inner city or suburban where some stars get through, but most of it does not. Hopefully some of us live in a rural sky where we see much more dim astronomical figures. So we are able to see just a few stars on a clear night. But the stars that we do see, some of this light we are seeing now left that star when dinosaurs roamed our planet. So you think about it, the complete poem of the universe is being robbed to us because of this light pollution. So how this impacts birds, as they're flying at night, especially if there are clouds, they will mistake these finer points of light to be stars. Or if there are brighter lights like a beacon or some very bright street lights, they'll actually be pulled off course and confused, and they will fly in circles around those areas. They waste a lot of energy. The birds, when they migrate, they have built up a lot of fat stores so they can make it to their wintering grounds. However, if they're flying in circles, they're going to deplete these stores, and they'll come crashing down when the sun finally rises. So they'll go into our town parks. They'll go into what they think is a tree, but it's going to be a reflection in the glass of a building or an atrium. And the results is devastating. As they collapse in these areas, they're going to be prone to attacks by other sources, predation, especially from cats. So just one building can cause major problems for birds in the area. Within 1 week in 2017, nearly 400 passerines, those are warblers, grosbeaks, thrushes, etc., were caught in a floodlight of a 32-story Texas skyscraper and killed via window collision. I don't know how many people are aware of this study, but in October 2019, Science journal published an article that showed that we have lost 3 billion birds in North America since 1970. That means our population is down by 3 billion. That's 1 in 4 birds have been lost. Our birds are facing many threats. Some birds are facing extinction. The threats to birds and the conservation challenges. So again, to reiterate, we have 722 species in North America, 76 migrate, 80% migrate at night, and up to 1 billion birds are lost per year. Half of these birds are lost at our homes and our small businesses. So as we face extinction, these birds are just going to become a ghost in our memory. So we're asking people and corporations to shut off lights during migration. It's an easy fix that could save 1 billion birds. So compared to the other efforts that we have for conservation of wildlife, I've been in the COA as a conservation chair for 6 years. And some of the things that we face for conservation is global warming, sea level rise, loss of habitat. These are really, really big issues to try to tackle, as opposed to just encouraging people to shut off their lights and to make their windows visible to birds. This is really, pardon the expression, low-hanging fruit, but we could all do it. So I mentioned other species that are that have evolved in the dark and depend on the night, and are being disrupted by our light pollution that we have. Bats, for example, they prey on moss mainly, and the moss will get caught in light and fly in circles. If you remember, you might have a lot of moss on your back porch, because you left the light on. Moss also get caught in street lamps. Biologists call this a vacuum cleaner effect, that as the street lamps are on, there'll be a whole string. So as moths try to go from one habitat patch to the next, they're caught up in this and fly in circles until they expend all their energy. This is time that they're not feeding. This is time that they're not pollinating plants and trees. This is time when they're not breeding. Same thing with fireflies. Fireflies, we all love them. I'm starting to get more in my backyard because I'm not raking and I'm not using pesticides, and I'm trying to limit the light pollution that's in my neighborhood. What happens with fireflies and bright lights is they don't know if the sun has actually set, so they don't, or if they are able to glow, the mate is not able to find them because it's lost in the light pollution. So here again, it's a matter of these insects being confused whether it's night or day. We have issues that are in our waters. It's both seawater and fresh water. We have zooplankton that will live in the lower depths during the day, because if they go to the higher depths closer to the surface, they will be predated on by fish who could see them. So they stay low, and when the sun goes down, they rise up so they could feed on algae and bacteria, whatever that they feed on. However, as the light is still there, they will be preyed on by the fish, and they're confused and they will stay in the depths. Here again, they lose opportunities to feed and opportunities to mate. So we could actually lose entire generations of this food source that other fish are going to need. Our amphibians, this is a spotted salamander, which few people have seen, but it's quite active during the spring, going to our vernal pools. They get disoriented. Here again, they follow the light and they get disoriented. They may not make it to the pool in order to mate. So I've talked about the zooplankton, and some people think, oh, you can't have light getting to the bottom of these lakes and oceans. There was a study done in Plymouth in 2020 where it showed that artificial light from coastal urban centers is widespread across the sea surface and the subsurface and the seafloor. They're finding that the areas exposed to is not trivial. Up to 76% of the seafloor in the survey region was exposed to artificial light. So the light measured in the study was both direct LEDs and sky glow. So this is pervasive. I know this from Plymouth, England, they're looking at the ocean. This would be people in southern Connecticut looking at Long Island Sound. But if you're along the Connecticut River or some of your ponds and reservoirs, that's going to be affected by this light pollution. So let's talk about us humans for a little bit. This picture shows two things. We're able to see this light glaring away here and shining in through windows. That's called light trespass. And it's something that is a huge contributing factor to light pollution, but I will go into ways that people and corporations can go about eliminating light trespass. But oftentimes when we talk about conservation, people think, well, why should I be concerned about it? That's a really hard conversation to have, because if people aren't there, they're not there. However, if you discuss human health, there's some very serious impacts that light pollution has on our health as humans. It causes stress, causes insomnia, and it dramatically disturbs our circadian rhythms, most notably our sleep cycles. So many people are chronically sleep deprived, which contributes to mood disorders, depression, and reduced cognitive efficiency and learning. These disruptive circadian rhythms as associated with artificial nightlife have been strongly linked to impaired metabolic functions, obesity, and various types of cancer, especially those that are endocrine related. What happens here is when we are exposed to light constantly, we disrupt our melatonin cycle. And leptin is a protein that suppresses our appetite, doesn't build. So we find ourselves having appetites and hunger well into the night. So you can see how that could contribute to obesity. So this melatonin, it has a strong antioxidant property. It induces sleep, it boosts the immune system and lowers cholesterol, and it helps the function of the thyroid, pancreas, ovaries, testes, and adrenal glands. In 2012, the American Medical Association declared light at night carcinogenic. There was a study that was done in 2008 in Israel where women were looked at who were living in neighborhoods that the light was bright enough to read by. And they found that there was 73% higher risk of developing breast cancer than those residing in areas with at least artificial lighting. So this is real. So this is a great photo because it shows the glare that lights produce. And this has a way of actually not making us safe at all. But a lot of people think that, oh, this light is very important for our safety. However, there's no clear scientific evidence that increased outdoor lighting deters crime. It may make us feel safe, but it has not been shown to make us safer. There's a 2015 study published in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health that found that streetlights don't prevent accidents or crime, but do cost a lot of money. Researchers looked at data on road traffic collisions and crime in 62 municipalities in England and Wales and found that lighting had no effect whether authorities had turned them off completely, dimmed them, turned them off at certain hours, or substituted low-power LED lamps. Furthermore, I was just reading a study out of China that demonstrated that if an area is brightly lit, you're going to have more crime in that area. There's a lot of variables to that, but it's just that a lot of studies are showing that this is not going to make us safe. If you go online, especially for the International Dark Sky Association website, they have a great video where it shows somebody actually hiding in the glare. You may see this if you're driving at night and you are caught in the glare either of a building or of an approaching car. You simply can't see. So people could be in that dark just beyond the glare and you won't see them. So that's not, we're really not safer. And in fact, some of this bright light is contributing to crime because there are robberies and break-ins and graffiti that actually thrive in the light. Another issue that people probably don't think about is that this light pollution, I don't know if you recognize this slide, but this is New Haven Harbor. It has all this glare and this color. It looks beautiful, yes, but it has an impact on navigation, nautical navigation. A friend of mine, Chris Howe, she's the Coast Guard Auxiliary of the Long Island sector. Um, she teaches navigation, and she states that navigational lights get caught in the glare and noise. So if you're trying to navigate your boat through a channel, you won't be able to see the buoys that have red lights on them, for example. And so these lights actually confuse navigators. So what can you do? What can we do? We were at first, when Lights Out Connecticut got started, we were simply asking people to shut their lights off from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. during peak migration. This helps with the birds quite a bit. So please, if you can, please try to follow these guidelines. You could also join Lights Out Connecticut. I posted our address in the comment section at the beginning. But join us, do your best to change your lights. I'll go into what that means and try to make your windows bird friendly. So when people say, okay, you're shutting your lights off or you're going to install a motion sensor on your garage floodlight, how does that help by shutting it off? We just had the 9/11 memorial. And there's a very good study. When this was first erected, people knew that, well, ornithologists knew it was going to be a problem for migrating birds. What happens, they get caught and they circle around this beacon and they have literally fallen out of the sky exhausted onto the ground dead. So this site has been monitored by the New York chapter of the Audubon Society, and they are working with the monument. If they determine that birds circling have built up to a certain number, they'll shut the light off, the beacons off for 20 or 30 minutes, and they find that the birds are able to recalibrate and continue on their migration path. So this is one example that shutting lights off does actually have an impact. This is McCormick Place, which is in Chicago on the lakeside. And they found that if they shut the lights off, these are interior lights, incidentally, which also confuse birds. But if they shut 50% of their lights off, the collision mortality of the glass is reduced by 60%. Nice to know that it's not linear. So if they shut 75%, I'm wondering what the numbers would be. So back to what you can actually do. This is when I do my presentation in person, I bring this prop with me. I'm sure a lot of us have a neighbor that have lit their driveway, their backyard with these floodlights, and they just glare out at you. This is like the worst lighting you could have. This is bright. This is like almost like having a mini sun. It burns at about 27,000 Kelvin, which is sunlight. One good thing I could say is it has this motion sensor. So if you have a motion sensor that goes off, goes on, and then shuts off in 5 minutes, that's helpful because your house is going to be dark. However, just glaring out beyond your property is not good. If there's a term called light trespass. So if you have light that is glaring beyond your property line, that's light trespass. Some towns like Hamden, Connecticut has a law in the books that you cannot have light trespass. That means you can't have a floodlight that's going to shine into your neighbor's window. This light fixture shows that you can't see the light element itself. This is downshielding, which is extremely helpful. It's a matter of just putting the light where it's going to be used instead of having this huge orb of light that extends all over and contributes to the night glow. And try to go with these warmer colors. This is about 2,700 Kelvin. So this is equivalent to the amber lights that your grandmother may have had. They called them bug lights back then, so they don't have a lot of moths on the back porch. I'm using the term Kelvin. That's what the industry uses. I know that could be kind of confusing, and I don't want to get into your college level physics about this, but it is covered. So with black body radiation, that when a body is heated up, it will emit light depending on what temperature it has achieved. So the higher the Kelvin, 27, this is the corresponding light. So we want people, or asking people, to be using lights that are here or lower. Because like I said, this is pretty much sunlight, but this is very, very prominent. Incidentally, Home Depot is on board with the International Dark Sky Association in providing lighting in this area as far as kelvins are concerned. So you could actually put these type of fixtures on your house, these bulbs on your house, and be compliant and help the wildlife. Other things you could do is you can make your windows visible to birds. Like I said, the birds come crashing down into areas where they wouldn't normally be. And so in the fall, that's when they're really prone to window collisions. So you make it visible. You could use decals or films, tape. One idea is to paint, if you have a school or if you have a kid in your house, let them paint on the outside using tempera paint. It washes right off. And then, so in the winter or the summer, you're back to your normal window. Or you could hang vertical cords. This has to be 2 inches apart, because if it's any wider, smaller birds like kinglets and hummingbirds will think that they could fly between and hit the glass. So it's just a matter of making your windows visible to birds. On the commercial level, there's etched glass. There's some glass that are can reflect UVs. So we see it like this, the birds see this. So it just makes it visible. And as we progress with our efforts, we're finding that this glass technology is becoming more and more affordable. This is Evans Hall at the Yale University School of Management. It's kind of like our epicenter of the Lights Out Connecticut movement. When it first opened, people thought it was going to be a bird killer, and sure enough, it was. And it inspired some research where they collected birds around the building, and then they extended to Yale and then all of New Haven, where they're trying to collect birds at the base of these windows during spring and fall migration, and just find out what windows they struck and what their injury was and what birds they were. But the custodial staff of this building agreed to bird-proof part of the back of the building. And this is the building that, part of the building that is exposed to trees, et cetera, as opposed to Whitney Avenue. So this is what we're looking at. This is it closer up, where you actually see the sky and you start to see the little dots. And here they are really, really close up. So as a human, this is what we would see, but the birds actually see the reflection being broken up and they won't fly into it. They had a significant decrease in window collisions, which is phenomenal. We could go to a shopping center or a hotel or the airport, and they have glass windows, and they do whatever's possible to make it visible to humans by striped decals or something. Because when humans bang into the glass, it's comedy, but when birds do it, it's lethal. But we do make efforts to make sure that this glass is visible to humans. Why can't we simply do that to birds? So what will Lights Out Connecticut do? We're going to continue to organize to pass legislation to protect birds in the night sky. We're going to help focus efforts on homeowners, business owners, towns and cities, and state governments. We'll share our resources, pamphlets, model legislation, and ordinances. We'll continue to host events and make presentations like this one. And we'll support bird strike monitoring and data collection, and we'll continue to lobby. What you can do, you can join us, you can take the pledge. Think of ways to launch an initiative in your town or to improve lighting rules. We are going to have a kickoff meeting for local leaders on the 11th. If you're interested, please put your email in the comment section, and I'll make sure that you're on this list. This is where we could share information, share experiences, and help each other in our effort to fight light pollution in our towns. You can also collect bird strike data. What's happened at Yale was very influential, and they continue to do it. And you can advocate. So when I say advocate, I don't mean storming the Bastille or defending a bridge against the British Army up in Concord. It's simply leading the way in your town and your city to pass bird-friendly building laws. This was a paper that was written by my co-chair Meredith Bargis and somebody on our steering committee, Viveka Morris, who started the whole study at Yale. So some of the things that they discovered, reviewing laws and initiatives at key locations like Chicago, New York, and a couple places in California, that there are local governments that are adopting bird-friendly building rules at no additional cost to their jurisdiction. So this worry about taxpayer money being spent, they actually save money when they shut off the lights and can protect their windows. And the city ordinances will serve as examples to surrounding towns and cities. So if Bloomfield follows lights out legislation and ordinances, you're going to see other towns in your area in Hartford County follow suit. New bird-friendly building laws are driving innovations and decreasing costs of materials. Since some legislation was passed in New York City requiring certain type of glass, we're seeing costs of that glass start to decrease. It's kind of like, remember when CD players first came out, they were expensive, and then they became quite affordable. So other things, successful advocacy requires sustained efforts by a few motivated individuals. So it might take 2 to 5 years for a handful of people to keep pushing. Lights Out Connecticut, we've been around for about a year and a half, for about almost a year. And we were able to get some legislation passed in the state legislature. But here again, it takes a few of us in order to keep doing it. Westport has passed some legislation in their town, and this is because of about a year-long sustained effort. You need good timing, like everything else. This includes finding officials that are sympathetic to the cause. Local data is important, but it's not essential. It's easy to interpolate this data that was done on the national level. And believe me, there's lots of data out there you could use as you approach your town councils. And integrate bird-friendly building regulations into local and state green building policy initiatives. So if you're going to require green technology in a building, extend that to include bird-friendly glass. So it's important to focus on both glass and lighting, and you need to define bird-friendly. So do you have to have on a 13-story building, all 13 stories to be bird-friendly glass, or just the lower 3 stories? Have materials that follow the ABC rating system. You have to define what is residential and be careful of exemptions, because sometimes that could be very confusing and you don't have the law applied in the areas where it needs to be. And also define what non-essential means versus essential lights. Now, you can have essential lights on timers and it's fine, but you could have essential lights in areas that are going to stay on. They just feel that, okay, it's in a public park, so we're going to call it essential. So you just have to be careful of these terms. So some of the big opposition is cost. Well, we find that costs are starting to drop, and aesthetics. Dead birds, in my opinion, aren't very pleasing to the eye, and having some dots or etching on windows really is not an issue. So we talk more about that later if you'd like. So this past year, we were able to get a law passed. It's called the Lights Out Connecticut law, that requires all of the state-owned buildings to shut their lights off. We were just pushing for those dates in the spring and fall that I showed, but they went a step further because they found that there was going to be a saving to the taxpayer So they're making this lights out ban from 11 to 6 o'clock, 11 at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. They're going to make that year round. So this is a great law. It doesn't go far enough because it's just state buildings, but it gives us something to point to as we approach our town government. Say, look, the state gets it. Why can't we do it here? This is some legislation that is being proposed in New York that extends to the type of lighting around businesses, etc. But I won't go into that for sake of time. One thing you can do during migration or any time that you see a dead bird because of a window strike, report it. This is called dBird. If you're familiar with birding, eBird is a big application that a lot of people use to report and keep records of their bird sightings. Please excuse the morbidity, but dBird for dead bird as opposed to eBird. eBird does not like to have anybody report dead birds. So somebody from the New York chapter of the Audubon created this. It's not an app, it's a website, but you could pull it up when you're on your phone if you have data in that particular area. So if you find a dead bird, pull it up, put in the address. It could also find out where you are using your phone's GPS. If you know the species, great. If you don't, take a picture of it. If you don't know this information, don't worry about it. Record the date, and if it was dead or just injured, and what you think the cause of death was. And then you upload a picture and any notes and submit. And this goes to a great database that people who are studying this or need local data can pull. It's also helpful to have this type of data if a town actually has started some type of lights out and bird friendly initiative. You can monitor the success by using this particular software. So it's a very powerful tool. So these are some of our partners. You may recognize some of these entities. We get a lot of support from the Connecticut Ornithological Association and the Hartford Audubon. Those are rather large in your area. So I want to turn things over to you. So what are your questions?